Welcome to the Strong for Life podcast. I'm your host, Conor O'Shea, and I really appreciate you tuning in. If you are enjoying these episodes, I'd really appreciate you taking a moment and rating it 5 stars on Spotify or on Apple or whatever podcast platform you use. This is going to allow more people to find this information. Without further ado, let's jump into today's show. All right, folks, super excited to share today's guest story with you all. It's Danny O Sullivan. Me and Danny were talking about 6 months ago, and a lot has changed over the last 6 months. So really excited to just jump into more about his background and also everything that's happened with his online business, his in-person business, and everything in between. So Danny, thanks for jumping on today, man.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. It was kind of quite special to make you the first person I've really put an effort into doing some podcasts with. I've had a lot of people asking, but I feel it's actually quite valid to kind of chat about the last time we spoke on screen, because for anyone who doesn't know, before that I just kind of was tipping with the online space, like as in more for business wise. I've always been active on social media and whatnot, but I always had a bit of a block towards it. And I feel we had this conversation, and then all of a sudden 3 days later my social media went kind of to where I'd hoped it always did, but never really kind of expected for that to happen as quickly as it did. And yeah, it was weird. I'm a big believer that things happen for a reason, and I feel you kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things that I was apprehensive about, and it's like the door's open then, which is pretty cool.
The door's definitely open, man. So
and maybe the floodgates is probably a better term.
100%, man. Let's just maybe go through your background a bit first, and then we'll kind of dive into like kind of what's happened. Just bring us up to scale, like to maybe the last kind of up to 2022 basically. So like kind of you got just a quick background, how you got into the fitness industry, obviously, like where you're based now, where you're actually from originally, and we'll kind of go from there. Okay.
Yeah. So originally from Dublin, and always had an interest in sport. I've played sport all my life. I played Gaelic football and hurling. I played everything up until I was about 15, and then I had to decide. That's just kind of how it works in Ireland. If you're anyway decent at a sport, you kind of have to choose at that 15, 16 level, because the next thing is adults. So I chose Gaelic and hurling, and I played a senior level at both of those. So I was always getting injured, and it kind of made me look into fitness. I was quite small when I was a teenager. I was always quite quick, but I had to put on a lot more weight to play adults. And that's what kind of brought me into that S&C world, probably from about 19 years of age. I'm 37 now. So, the guts of 20 years I've been going to the gym. And yeah, I kind of went, now when I look back, I went the wrong way about it, because I thought like putting on weight and getting stronger was the way to go, but actually I should have been a lot more sport specific and yada yada yada. So as a result, I got a lot of injuries, which were always concerning, and always kind of like, why is that happening to me? And there's 14 other people on this pitch and whatnot. So that kind of led me into studying about fitness. Even before I actually got a certificate, I was reading every magazine. I was following some of the most amazing people online, and even before then, I was reading men's health magazines and just getting as much information as I could. I was just like a sponge. I'd like to absorb everything. And then someone said to me, well, why don't you make a profession out of it? I was working in the car industry, so I started to work as a PT on the side, and I never worked in a big commercial gym. That never appealed to me. Weirdly, I like training in commercial gyms because I can put headphones on and zone out, but I don't like to work in them. So then, I first really got absorbed to TRX, which was like a resistance-based training. There's actually a TRX right here behind me. And that one is actually the first one that I bought, and I've had it now 12 years, and I still carry it around everywhere I go. And that, alongside a Canadian bodybuilder called Ben Pakulski, he's a former Arnold Classic competitor. That was kind of, the two of those were the biggest thing for me around that kind of 2008 to 2012 mark, where he was focusing a lot on like, feeling the exercises and not just going through the motion, trying to lift as heavy as you can. And that really got me into, not being focused on what's the heaviest I could lift. And I was still playing football alongside that. So everything had to kind of relate to that as best as I could. And myself and another guy were the first people to bring TRX to Ireland. So at the time, it boomed quite well in 2012, and we had people coming from all over Ireland to our classes, and yeah, that was pretty exciting. And then we kind of went our separate ways, which probably affected that a little bit. And I ended up just, you know what, Ireland's a very small country, and I just ended up leaving Ireland quite soon after that, and I moved to Australia. And on the way, I went through Thailand, and it just opened my eyes to so much more of the world that it made me want to travel even more. I came to Australia, spent some time on the East Coast, and then moved over to the West Coast, and I was living there for about a year and a half, playing football and whatnot. And
You were
then,
in Perth, were you?
yeah, I was in Perth for close to a year and a half. I
Oh,
was back
right.
in
Okay.
2013, so 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And yeah, I was still working in the motor trade there. And I left then and went to Boston. I was playing Gaelic football in Boston, and I got injured for that was the second knee injury. And then I ended up going back to Ireland because I wasn't much use. I couldn't play football. So yeah, I went home. I had surgery in Boston, but then I went home back to Ireland, and that was kind of at a stage where I didn't know what I want. And I've always been into like tech and stuff like that. So I went back and studied computer science. But weirdly, I think it was when I stopped playing football, I went from training, 5 hours a day from probably about 8 years of age, and I stopped playing football about 27, 28 to nothing. And I was still going to the gym, but what I mean by nothing is I didn't have a drive. And I came across an advertisement in a place called the Movement Studio, it was actually called AM Fitness back then, but they were advertising a handstand class. And the girl I was dating at the time, we kind of liked to challenge ourselves, and we were like, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool." Like, I've always wanted to do a handstand as a kid. And so then we went to that, and I was just blown away that I couldn't do it. It baffled
Hmm.
me. It was like, why,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a very competitive person. I just couldn't understand why I couldn't do it. And that kind of just opened my world to where I'm at today. Like that was 2015. And I just couldn't understand why I couldn't put my arm over my head, fully locked out or anything like this. That just, here was someone like, I'm not going to say that I was egotistical, but like I felt I had a decent level of knowledge, and just I took it the opposite way in the sense that I was like, wow, there's so much more to learn, not blocking it and I know everything. And it just, yeah, it was just amazing. It made me want to just move even better. And I thought like that this was the answer to, why I'm getting injured all the time, because I'm not moving to the best of my abilities, right? And so, yeah, I got addicted to handstands. That went on for many years. I came back out to Australia again. Then after that, that was 2016. I just kind of, I hit a point in my life where, yeah, I was a bit lost, and I just felt Australia had always been calling. And I came back out. I was actually following a gym in Sydney on social media, and they were backed by like an American company called Gymnastics Bodies at the time. And I had started to look into that when I got fixated on the handstands, and I was following them on Instagram. And then I was actually moving to Sydney to help out with a friend and mind her kids at the time, right? And weirdly, they're like within a 5 mile radius of each other. So I was like, there's a reason for this. Like this is the level of training that I can't find in Ireland, and I want to get better at what I'm trying to study. Right, that's just the person who I am. And so yeah, I
Hmm.
came over, started training with them for 3 months, and I ended up going to New Zealand for a couple of months, just like 3 or 4 months, and then I came back. But I came back because the gym, which is called False Grip, in the northern beaches of Sydney, they wanted me to come work for them. They were growing rapidly, and they saw the need for more trainers, and they really liked what I was about at the time. And yeah, I joined False Grip to train initially, and then I just really fell in love with the community. I fell in love with the people working there. We had this amazing team in that like 2016, 2017 era, and it was just so good to have five coaches working together who just believed in the brand and just were fully behind each other. And yeah, so long story short, stayed there for 4 years, got really into what I'm doing, started to post online. Like, I mean, I think I created an Instagram in like 2012, but I think for about 4 or 5 years, like I didn't use it as a business. I never thought of it as a business. It was only until we started to host seminars in the gym, and I started to see these people coming in, and you know, I started to follow their Instagrams. Like, wow, this person has like 100,000 followers. Oh wow, like what are they about, right? And for me, I was like, oh, I could do that. Like, I can do that. I know that. I know that. And it's like, okay, maybe there's actually a part to play here. Like maybe there's something here for me. And that was about 2017. I know that because one of my friends recently sent me a screenshot of a message that I had sent him saying, "Hey, I've just bought a camera, I bought a microphone. I'm going to start building a YouTube channel." And he just like he was fully behind me. Most people were just like, "You're a weirdo. Like you're
What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then that just went on for years. Like I had different approaches to my Instagram, which I'm happy to talk about. Like initially, it was mainly around handstands and showing people how to handstand and documenting my journey to one arm handstand from complete beginner, like that kind of stuff. But then I started to notice that people kept asking me, like, "Oh, how could you teach me how to do that? Or how could I do that?" And then I also saw that people were like, "Oh, I can't get my hands over my head. Like, is there an exercise that you could help me with?" And so I started to research a lot around Instagram and social media in general. And, with today's world, everybody's getting bored really easily. We don't have a lot of patience. And so I used to start to think of how can I get the most information out on screen in the least amount of time? And when I look back at the old videos, the amount of words I wasted, the amount of like stammering and as I started to upskill myself, I started to look at other people who are doing it really, really well, and what are they doing? What's different to that? And weirdly, it wasn't until 2022, like probably January, when I just had this little click, and the click was I was always doing the same exercises. It was always like, the exercises have been very similar. I've obviously learned different variations along the way, but generally speaking, they've been the same. The difference is I started to watch the older videos, and I started to ask myself, would I share that with somebody? Was that entertaining enough that I would watch that? And we're only talking a 60-second video. So then I started to research. Gary Vaynerchuk would be a big influence on how I started to change my approach, because I listened to him a lot. And the idea of catching someone's attention, like from the get-go, is something that I really started to change, right? And I feel that happened around January of last year. I started to post a lot on TikTok because, a lot of people have said, "Oh, this is a new platform, you need to get into it." And I had said to myself,
Gary V in particular
with...
has been talking about it.
Exactly, right? Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And yeah. And I said, well, what's like, for me, this is easy for me because I have all these videos made from the last 5 years. What if I re-edit them to the format of TikTok and then see if they perform? And so a few of the other people that I was following on TikTok had been saying a lot about, it's just about the algorithm. You just got to post regularly. You just got to find your niche and blah, blah, blah. So I posted 3 times a day for about 3 months. And then I started to notice some videos kick off, some, up to 200,000 views. And I was thinking, whoa, this is amazing. It's amazing in that it's working for me. Like the time and effort that I'm putting in is now being validated, and I'm hopefully getting to see results from that. That, long story short, went all the way up to like, I think 60,000 followers or something like that. And I was like, oh, great. Like we're now getting some exposure. But the downside of TikTok was people couldn't DM you. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I was like, I didn't start my business searching for followers. I started like, I at the time I was working in person, and, I was making a pretty decent living, still am. And for me, it was like, I don't care how many followers I have, but I would definitely like the exposure to show people what I can do. And we had a call, and on that call, you kind of really opened my world to stop doubting myself, I suppose. Like it was like, hey mate, you have all this knowledge, you're doing all these things, your video quality is really good, you're you're presenting yourself really well. What, I don't know what else you want me to say to you other than just take a leap, right? And yeah, it was really weird. It was about 3 days later, my fiance said to me, because I had kind of given up on Instagram then. I was only posting every now and again, but what I was doing was the videos that were geared towards TikTok. I was like, well, they're edited now. I might as well put them on as reels. And I had trialed this particular type of video, and I did 5 versions of the same thing. And when I posted it on TikTok, they all performed really, really well. So I was like, okay, I'm onto something. And so then I started to trial that on Instagram. The exact same video, I just like posted it on Instagram. I didn't change it or anything. But what I noticed was it ticked all the boxes of what, say, Gary Vaynerchuk has said, and that is, you've got 3 seconds to hook someone in. You got to make it interesting. You got to nearly tell them how long it's going to be. You got to tell them exactly what they're going to expect in the video, and then they make that decision in the first 5 seconds. Time, or their time, I suppose, is worth it. And so that was quite interesting. And I posted those 5 variations on Instagram, and one of them like went up to like 1 million views, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. And then the other one just went like, I'll see your 1 million and I'll raise you. And that just was like, I just remember saying to my fiance, 200 more followers on Instagram. Like my Instagram had been quite flat. And then the next day I was like, oh, it's 2,000 more followers. And then it was like, I had to turn my notifications off my phone. It was just, every time I logged in, it was 100 new followers, 100 new followers, 100 new followers. So what I noticed is Instagram changed their algorithm to try to keep up with TikTok. I had performance-based videos put into Instagram at the right time. They started to score pretty well. So what it does is it says, if this video was watched for a certain amount of time, then it scores well. We give it out to 10% of people. If they watch it and they share it and they comment and they engage with it, we'll send it to another 10% of people. And then that just that's how the algorithm works. So I knew it was the algorithm because the level of growth stayed consistent. It didn't go 10,000 new followers and then 2,000 new followers. It was like a cog in the wheel. It was just going and going and going. And because you were talking to me, and many other people were writing to me too, right?
Just tell people, because I think when we talked, I think you were either at 7 or 9,000, and it was just.
I was at 5. I was at
5,000. That's like
5,
last
000.
September.
Yeah, I was around the same as yourself. The exact same as yourself.
And then you put those like. Would have been, it was the hamstring flexibility one, wasn't it?
It was touching your toes. Yeah, it was touching your toes.
So
it was touching your toes.
Because it was probably in like 3 or 4 weeks, I think, you went from 5-6K to tell people like basically what happened.
Yeah,
like
I believe in a 2-week period it went to about 320, something like that, I believe. And it's now at, I don't know, I'll tell you now. I think it's at about 436.
440, yeah.
Yeah, 436, but it's growing at about 1,000 a day.
Wow.
Yeah, so the algorithm's still working, and I'm quite strategic in a lot of the stuff I do, because I take the Gary Vaynerchuk approach again, and I use Instagram as a CV. So it's like, give the people what they want. Those are the stuff that I would like to post to time, but at the end of the day, it's a business now, and it's served me very, very well, and it's now, I'll obviously tell you that in a second, but it's opened my world dramatically, and this year is a very, very exciting year. The last 6 months have been, how would I say this? Like, I'm very thankful that I have a good team behind me, and I had those people prepared because I had always wanted to go online. So I had people in the background. I had good website built with a lot of accessibility in the background, which then allowed to accommodate for, the level of interest that came. Like, it was, thankfully I'm a very, very efficient worker, because, my mornings are starting at 4:30. Yeah, my mornings are starting at 4:30, and sometimes even just going through Instagram messages could take like 2 hours. And I tend to write back to everybody. So where possible, and I don't have a virtual assistant. It's me. It's anybody who gets a message, it's from me. So yeah, that has been exciting, but it's also been like, I've had to I went to the Maldives last November, and that was a great reset, to be honest. Like, although I was working there, a lot of it was around, you know, I didn't train or anything like that. I just flaked in the pool because I was just so burnt out.
Yeah. Maybe touch on that a bit, Danny, because I think that's interesting. Because I think all coaches kind of what happened to you, that's kind of like the ideal. Like, I want to get a massive following and that's going to open up all these things. But maybe talk about the impact of the volume and like going from 5K to 450 or 440 is
Mhm.
pretty insane. So like how has that extra noise affected you, like in that sense, or how do you manage that now?
I think the best thing for me is that I never looked like I initially didn't look at Instagram as a way of earning. Like, so I've always built this really good business. I did workshops even when I didn't have the level of following that I have. I've taught group training for at least 7, 8 years. So I'm very polished with large numbers. Um, but in terms of the volume and the large numbers that are coming in on a DM base, like there's a lot of people who want things for free, right? That's the world we live in. So that's one of the biggest things. But I use a lot of my sales background in the sense that I created playlists on YouTube. I have certain exercises. If the person's not going to pay, like buy from you, it's a better customer journey to just give them something. So
Mm.
what I do is if somebody comes to me and has an issue with their hip, but is not willing to, do do a consultation or something, or even just buy a program or actually get some online coaching. Well, then, for me, it's like, it can be quite negative for me to just go, well, see you later. It's easier for me to just go, well, here's a hit playlist that I made on YouTube. It could potentially help you. Like, it's maybe 5 basic exercises, but if that's what you're looking for, like just something that you're not doing, like for me, most people are not doing the stuff that I teach unless they work with someone like you or me. And so even me giving them something that's pre-made on YouTube, they see a drastic improvement. I get so many messages of gratification around, hey, I've been trying your videos and such and such is gone, or that pain in my back is less, and that's kind of what makes it really worth the while, right?
Yeah, for
In
sure, man.
term in terms of accommodating the volume, I've just been, very thankful that I've had these things in place. So like I've had a pre-made PDF that I could send somebody. I've had a YouTube playlist. So I know that, let's say for instance, Connor writes to me and he says, hey, I've got a really sore hip, but I'm struggling financially. It's like, well, here's a playlist, try it. He might say that to 3 of his friends, and his friends go, well, I'm not struggling financially, and this guy sounds like a great guy. I'm going to go and write to him. And that's my approach with most people. I don't, I related to the Instagram wasn't my sole earning. So I would rather entertain people, give people some, of my knowledge. And most people eventually come back and say, hey, look, I tried that and it was really awesome. Actually, I'm in a better financial position. I'm open to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really cool as well, man. Because like when we talked, you had everything was built. Like you had all the foundational stuff built. You'd the website, the programming, the app, everything was there. So like
Mm-hmm.
it's like everything that you needed to withstand the volume was already in place, which is
Yeah. I just
which
didn't
is
have the volume
great.
at the time.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know.
It's like, where's the
Like
where's the people?
you're doing everything right, man. And yeah, it's interesting because I know other online coaches and you'd go on their Instagram and it looks like they don't have a business and they have this unbelievable business. So it's just been awesome to see you just basically kill it in the last 6 months. So I'd love to hear about like this year, now that all this change has
Mm-hmm.
happened. Like, what are you thinking? What's the plan? I know you're planning workshops, right?
Uh, Planning workshops. I'm going to be leaving Australia in about 4 weeks' time. We're heading around the world for 6 months, which is pretty exciting.
That's awesome.
And yeah, we're going back to the Maldives to work. That'll be for about 5 weeks this time, which is pretty cool.
Very cool,
And
man.
yeah, the challenge for me this year is around, we're going to be bringing the whole family. So I have 2 kids and we'll be bringing them with us. I just feel my partner's on maternity leave. I've got 2 young kids that aren't in school. Now is the perfect time to, yeah, like their first memories are going to be traveling around the world. Like who doesn't want that, right? And thankfully now I've shifted majority of my business online. I've got only a handful of clients that I actually train in person now, mainly because they've stood with me like over the COVID times and whatnot, and they really helped me financially. So for me, it's not about the money. It's actually I really like these people, and they helped me more than they know, in the sense that COVID affected us all, but it definitely affected me big time. And not having family support and living the other side of the world, you're in a very similar position. And so
Mm.
just having people like that who are just they just kept me afloat basically. And so for me, it's again, I'm a very loyal person, so it's repaying that favor in a sense. So what'll happen is when I start to travel, they have the option of coming online and continuing to work with me. Some of them who just like need in-person training, then I have a very close friend who teaches very similar to me, so I would always put a lot of my clients onto her. So we're gonna be going to the Hard Rock Hotel in the Maldives. That's kind of one of the businesses that have reached out to us, and they want me to come and showcase what I can do and train a lot of their guests and whatnot, and that's pretty exciting. From there, then we're going to head to Europe, and the goal in Europe is to see family. I haven't seen them in 3 years, but we're allowing ourselves to do that by doing workshops as well, because I just love teaching. I really enjoy teaching workshops. It's For me, it feeds my energy. Sitting in front of a screen and training people, it doesn't bring the same level of excitement as being that hands-on coach and having 20 people in a room really want to learn what you can teach them. And so yeah, we're going to hit mainland Europe, and then we'll head back to UK and Ireland. My partner's from Scotland, so we'll spend a bit of time in Scotland, a bit of time in Ireland, float around between the two, and then we'll hopefully be heading back towards Australia through the US. 40% of my followers on Instagram are from the US, so it would be rude not to go through the US.
That's awesome, man. So you're doing a world tour basically.
Pretty much, yeah. We are going to fly around
Sick.
the globe.
Yeah.
Um,
And
we'll
so like you'll
potentially
be
come
doing
back Hawaii,
workshops
New
in
Zealand,
specific cities, so a few cities in Europe, obviously Ireland, UK, and
Scotland,
then
England,
North
yeah,
America. Awesome,
and
man.
potentially Spain. We're definitely going to Spain on a holiday potentially, but yeah, the way I'm doing it is I'm picking the locations that I want to go to for a specific reason. I reach out to that kind of demographic and see is there a want. And yeah, for me, it's like I just love teaching. So the more people I can teach, the better. And I just get too many messages from people in the States saying you need to get over here. So I just I have to do it. Most of my online clients now are from the States, so
Yeah.
it would be rude not to. And I've lived there. I love it. I love it over there.
Cool, man. That's amazing. Awesome, mate. So let's talk about maybe obviously you've been in the industry for a long time. So could you say maybe three people, three mentors, can be in person, can be online, that have had kind of big influences on you over the last, 10, 15 years?
Yeah. Well, Ben Pakulski is definitely, I would say, he was the first. He was. I actually only just commented on one of his posts yesterday, I think, telling him. But yeah, that was the big one, because at that time, I was playing football, I was playing a decent level, like decent standard, and so I was really trying to focus on, making sure I was doing everything to the best of my abilities. And just his knowledge, like his scientific knowledge. And even now, I fully appreciate him because he's stepped out of the bodybuilding world and he's actually now focusing a lot more on moving better. And you'll notice now, he's obviously lost a lot of size and whatnot, but he's now seeing where the longevity comes in. And it's just kind of, it's reiterated even more why I follow him. I am very engrossed in Gary Ward at the moment, which is an English guy who focuses a lot on your feet. He has a book called
Right.
What the Foot, because every time he treated people, they'd be saying what the F. And so he wrote a book called What the Foot. And
How
it's
do you
all
spell his
about
surname?
basically Ward, Ward, Gary Ward,
Ah, great.
Ward.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. And I'm currently doing his course on the lower limbs. And I just again, I like to be a sponge. I like to learn new things, new methods. And it's been a real game changer because, I played a sport for so many years. I'm wearing a football boot. My feet got quite cramped in it and got quite comfortable in that cramped position. So it wasn't until I moved to Australia and spent a lot more time barefoot that it was about 2012 was when I first started to really delve into barefoot and buying like the likes of your Vibrams and whatnot. But it wasn't until I got to Australia when I really noticed how weak my feet were and trying to walk on the concrete floor and whatnot. And now I've put a lot of effort into that. So I attest that to a lot to kind of Gary Ward and the videos that I've watched and the focus point. As a result, I now exclusively wear toe socks as an example. You'll see them a lot in my videos. I don't wear what people would call normal socks. And my answer to everybody is, do you wear gloves or mittens, right? And that's kind of usually what I say to people.
Yeah. Great, man.
Um,
So, and third person?
from that is probably like there's a guy called Andy Myers. He's Dublin based. Again, he owns the Movement Studio, and I pay a lot to him because I believe he was the person that made it so interesting when I went to his gym. He showed me what love is like in the fitness industry, because I feel like there's a lot of trainers out there who are all about themselves. And he really showed me the joy in actually sharing knowledge and, putting your own beliefs on a shelf for a second and appreciate that somebody might have a different approach to things. And he really opened my world to mobility training and flexibility. So I would say, yeah, when you meet him, you'll know how infectious he is. I don't know if you've ever met him, but if you were in Dublin, you need
No,
to go to the
never.
Movement
But it
Studio.
looks like an awesome gym. It's somewhere I
Oh,
definitely will drop into.
it is the definition of a community. And that's something that's very hard to build in the fitness industry. And I think he does it really, really well. And every time I go home, I generally do a workshop there because, yeah, he's a lovable guy. And anybody who teaches a handstand class with coffee available is just
It's like
that's a legend in
my
my
two
eyes, right?
favorite things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
that's an amazing morning. Let's talk just for people listening, like especially maybe people who are following you. What do you see as kind of the big pitfalls that maybe people fall into, and can you give a few nuggets? I know this is like a broad question, but maybe think about the 1 to 3 main problems you see repeatedly cropping up for, let's just say, someone in their 40s, and maybe 2 or 3 nuggets you could give them just so they can have something to take away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the biggest problem in the fitness industry is falling down rabbit holes and putting yourself in a box. I feel like when people label themselves a guru or label themselves, they
You're a
tend
guru now,
to.
though, Danny. So you need to
I'm
get
not a
the man bun
that is
going.
the
And
that is the one thing I will definitely stress. I am not. It's like when someone says influencer, I'm like, oh my god, I cringe. But
yeah.
what I feel happens a lot of people is they put themselves in a this is my way, and so then what happens is if you try to come out of that, then people judge you, right? So my way is movement, and it's like I'll go to a yoga class. I like to expose myself. I saw you yesterday. Was it a salsa class or something that you put up?
Oh man, I like bachata. I've been doing bachata for the last
There, yeah,
6 weeks. But the funny thing about bachata is like spinal waves, which you've done, I'm sure, with the whole movement stuff. That's
yeah.
part of bachata, and it's a very just like that's just so it's so humbling how bad my movement is, even though I've been like
Yeah,
movement
right?
teacher.
Yeah,
Yeah, so totally, man. Like I think it's just learning different things, but continue.
yes. So yeah, I like to expose myself. I say to most people, I want to be a generalist in my own kind of training, but I like to be a specialist in my coaching. So for me, it's like I don't need to be the bendiest person in the room, right? There's a lot of people who come to my workshops who are far more flexible than me, but my goal is to educate people on how to move better, and I do it myself. And what I take with me is the baggage of a previous body of playing football and a lot of trauma, and that I take that with me. And I know that I'm getting better than I was, and I know there's still a long journey ahead of me, and I'm okay with that. My advice, I would say, as you've said to people who maybe are that, over 40 or whatnot, is for a lot of people, they're deconditioned and they need to appreciate that what's happened in the past has happened in the past. So it's like You know, a lot of people will come to me with their story, and that's one of the hardest parts of overcoming any kind of trauma is go of a story, because the story is connected to you. So example would be, there's a guy in a bar sitting at the corner, you go up and you talk to him, and he's telling you, oh yeah, I could have made it as a footballer, but I have this knee injury. And it's like, okay, but what if I got rid of the knee injury? What if, like, as in, not that you're ever going to be a footballer, but like, what if I just got rid of that knee injury? Well, now your story's gone, right? Like your knee moves fine now, right? And that's one of the biggest things. A lot of people with chronic illnesses will have to go through the psychological aspect of the letting go, right? It's okay. Like, yeah, that happened, but now it's time to actually just have a body that moves okay.
Mm.
The other side of that as well is realizing that, you know, the 10 dips you could do a half your body weight like 15 years ago, maybe you can't do that now, and be okay if you have to do push-ups on your knees. That's okay. You know, all my programs are built on a continuum. And all I say to the person is like, it's the same journey, but I might be at this stop and you might be back here, but that's okay. You just have a couple more stops to get to where you want to be. And I think most of the time when you like break that down to somebody, they appreciate it, right? They realize, yeah, okay, he's right. I haven't trained in 15 years. He's been training 3 times a week for the last, 20 years, just in a strength training kind of context, right? So it's, for me, that's they're 2 big things. And then the other thing is I'm pretty sure you do the same thing, but most of my training is built towards a visual skill. And the idea behind that is so that I can actually see what I'm working towards. So if I give a handstand push-up as an example, somebody might be doing a push-up on their knees, but they're still thinking of this cool skill that could potentially be something that they work towards. That becomes more addictive than just standing in the mirror doing weights. Now, if I'm still working towards that visual skill, I might still be standing in the mirror doing some weights, but I know it's working towards that skill, right? And I think they're 3 big things for me: is appreciate like where you're currently at, not where you were. The second thing is, appreciating that trauma is there for a lot of us. Trauma could be simple as I now have 2 kids. I don't get 9 hours sleep. I now struggle to be motivated to go to the gym. That can be traumatic for some people because they're like, well, I really want to go to the gym. And so, yeah, the last one was, I've just lost my train of thought because I rambled as I always do.
Visual skills.
Yes, just visualizing those skills. Yeah, I mean, that's how handstands, I believe, changed my life, because I really changed my approach to what I'm working towards and how it relates to my body, and not just training for the sake of it.
Yeah, they're really good points, man. In particular, like the last one I find really helpful for people who are trying to rehab stuff, because a lot of times they go to the physio, not to bash physios, but like it can just become very boring and monotonous if there's no like, this is where this is going, right? Like, oh, you're doing this, but this is actually leading you to be able to do this cool thing up here. And that creates that excitement. And then they were like, oh, cool, it's going to be worth getting through this kind of grind phase to then be able to do this visually, exciting skill or whatnot, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think I don't bag physios, but what I usually try to educate clients when they come to me, and they say, especially if they say, oh, why did my physio not say that to me? And for me, like, a physio's role is usually around acute trauma on a muscle, as an example, right? And so it's kind of like they're trying to get you to the position where you can get back to training. And so sometimes people don't appreciate that it's safer for me to give you bands and get you to do a couple of things, because I'm not standing there watching you doing it. So I could give you a benchmark, but we have to be very careful on that, right? While as when someone comes to a physical therapist or a personal trainer, or someone who's quite well versed in what they do, they bring them in the physical aspect. So they're maybe in a gym. So now it's like, okay, you've been doing that stuff. Now you're going to stand in front of me. I'm going to watch you, and I'm going to, monitor your progress. And then when I feel that you're ready, then I can add more to it, right? So, yeah, I feel sometimes physios get a bad rap, but I think when people appreciate why I would send someone to a physio, as an example, I send most people to like a good osteo or a really good chiro who looks at the body as a whole, because I think we should be looking structurally how we're moving in our daily, like how our daily movements are. But if I have someone who's playing sport and has an acute trauma, of course, if they've torn a muscle, you're going to the physio. So that's kind of my approach in terms of, and that's probably a good point to actually talk about, is that I'm more than happy to revert out. I refer a lot of my clients to get, whether it's a sports massage, whether it's again seeing a physio because you've actually torn something, doing something. If I'm dealing with an athlete, if I'm dealing with a Joe Soap, and I can see that the work we're doing is good, but maybe they just need a bit of manual therapy as well, a couple of corrections, as alongside what we're doing. The corrections won't the corrections aren't the be all end all, which is the mistake that a lot of people make. And that's why, again, Kairos can get bagged as an example, because people go and get clicked 2 weeks later, they got to go back. But it's the what you're doing in between the 2 weeks is the golden nuggets, right?
Yeah, I think it like long term, the way I'd love to see like general health to be approached would be like you have a GP, then you have like a nutritionist or a dietitian or like a coach, a lifestyle coach. Then you have like a PT and you have like a therapist. And that's
Yeah.
like the person's wellness framework, and everyone's working together for this person because it's just a much better outcome. As you said, like, you have a certain skill set, but then there's a scope of
100%.
practice that a physio is going to be way more versed and qualified to help. And the same with like, if it's specific, whatever, gut health issues or actual medical issues or psychological issues, a therapist or a GP or someone or a dietitian is going to be better versed as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. I have a very close circle of like people who are fair to, and whenever I do anything, if I'm promoting something on my page or if I'm referring someone out, it has to be someone. It has to be either something I believe in, something I've paid for, or something that I've let. Like if it's a practitioner, someone who's actually worked on my body and I saw value from it. That's generally how I will work in terms of referring stuff, because if I go back to my Instagram as an example, now I'm starting to see a lot of brands reach out to me and all this kind of stuff. And I've said it, I don't want to become a product whore. So
I've
I have to
seen you
make
now. The
sure
last
that
2 months, man, you're flogging all these supplements and all this fat
yeah,
shredders.
yeah, 100%. Get these
But have you
CLAs, come on in, like
yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I'm guessing like you're getting a lot of offers now with that type of stuff, is it?
yeah, most of them I say no to.
Mm.
There is one that I'm working with at the moment now, which is around a barefoot shoe, and it's a more dressier shoe, which, yeah, I tried and tested it first before I've even spoke about it, which is why you probably have no idea which one I'm talking about. So that's
Mm.
been pretty exciting. And again, until I've tried something and believe in it, then I won't promote it. I don't yes, I care about stuff, but I not enough that I have to. I've had people write to me on Instagram sending me stupid gimmicks, and I just have no interest. It's like if I wouldn't buy it, why am I going to ask someone like who follows my videos to buy this thing? They're going to go, "What do you get me to buy this thing?" It was like it lasted a
It's
week,
like
or it was ridiculous, right?
cryptocurrencies and yeah, you'll be
Oh,
flogging
don't even
everything.
start with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But
Uh
I'll tell you one of the most ridiculous things. It was this infrared massager thing that would like cups onto your body, and I was just like, I
if
wouldn't buy
you
that. So why would I like?
if you advertise that, I would have bought it. I would have put in your
I
discount
know
code
you
for
would, yeah.
that.
Exactly.
Awesome, man. Let's jump into some rapid fires. So like let's say your if you could ideal dinner date. If you could go out for someone go out with someone for 2 or 3 hours, pick their brain and really just like
Don't say date; you'll get me in trouble.
mentor. If you could mentor with someone for two
For
or 3 hours.
sure, for me, it's Gary Vaynerchuk. I feel like
Mm.
I'm not even joking. I've been sending him when my Instagram went crazy. I sent him a message thanking him, and then I kept score of where it's going. And yeah, when it gets to 1 million, which is the goal by the end of this year, I'm gonna hound them. I'm gonna hound them.
Did he respond to your DMs?
He hasn't responded yet, but I'm gonna hound him until he does. And then when I get to
Yeah.
America, I'm gonna search for him.
That's great, mate. Next, for what are you most grateful for and why?
Um, I'm very grateful for the level of movement that I have, considering the amount of injuries that I've had. I've had, 6 or 7 major surgeries, and I've had a lot of things that have been quite traumatic. So I'm very thankful that even the quality of movement that I possess is, in the words of my Cairo, it's pretty damn good for someone who's been, beat around the bush. So that's probably it. It's the level of movement, that because I was quite hard on myself maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and wondering why was I not advancing as quick as others, and then I have to take into consideration the trauma that I have. Sure, it's becoming a father. I feel now I've done it twice. I mean, you're only a father once, but 2 kids. Biggest accomplishment in that I've had a great influence from my parents, and it's been amazing that I can now, try to start my legacy as a father. My parents have been nothing but supportive for me, no matter how weird the decisions I've made in life. And one of the biggest things that my dad has always said to me is like, just because I don't understand what you're doing, it doesn't mean that it's not worth doing. And that's been really something that's tested and tried and tested with me. I'm a very pros and cons sort of person. So before I make a decision, I'll definitely, make sure that it's the right type of decision for me based on the pros and cons. And yeah, my parents have been a huge influence in my life. My mom worked 2 jobs as kids. We had our neighbors would mind us, as an example, because we couldn't afford to go to daycare, or we didn't do that sort of thing. My mom couldn't afford to have a childminder or whatever it was. And my mom used to work on nights in the hospital, and then she'd drop us to school, and then she'd go work in days in a post office. And so we've had to work hard in our life. We've made sure that the little things mean a lot. And the good thing about where I'm currently at now is that I don't need flashy things. I don't need to have the best car. If I showed you the piece of shit that I drive, that's what makes this even sweeter, right?
Lambo photos now, man, on your profile.
Yeah, right. And the Rolexes, right? So for me, it's like, look, I'm more interested in just helping people, and I truly mean that. I get a lot of satisfaction when I receive testimonials. I get a lot of satisfaction, especially people who haven't even bought anything from me, but are getting huge benefit out of even just the videos that I put on a social context. So that's been really rewarding for me. So my biggest achievement, our biggest accomplishment, is becoming a father, and I put everything else that comes with it has been because of the influence that I've had from my parents.
And then last question, you could put something on a billboard that's going to reach millions, if not billions of people, what would you put on it and why?
For me, it would be fail to prepare, prepare to fail. Movement is for life, because I believe a lot of people reach out to me afterwards. It's the same approach as like, why don't you prepare yourself for everything that you do? Like, would you go and do an examination without studying? Would you do driving lessons before you actually go to the driving tests? So it's like, if you're doing things in your daily life that you're not prepared for, why not research it? And maybe training can be put in as a form of research, because that's the way I look at it. I'm constantly researching my body, constantly thinking about my movements, constantly wanting to improve it. Why wouldn't you think that way? I'll tell you one thing. The biggest problem with the fitness industry is that HIIT training has been very well marketed, and people get that initial dopamine effect. And so that's what they lust for. And then the problem is you can only drive a Ferrari at 100 miles an hour for so long before the engine burns out.
Where can people find out more about you? Like, where are you most active? Maybe website, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you want us to send people for you.
Very easy for me. It's Hands Dan at every social media you can think of. Handsdan.com is the website. And I'm pretty active. So if I don't get back to you in, 4 to 6 hours, I generally get back to people within that 24-hour period. So if there is anything that you are concerned about in terms of your movement prep, for sure, reach out. And as you're well aware now, you could go and check my YouTube channel, because I've got loads of playlists there.
Awesome, mate. Well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you. It's also just been so cool to see you take off over the last 6 months, because like you've done